All right, we'll just give it a few more minutes. I know some people are going to need to download Zoom if they're using it for the first time. Yeah, we've still got some people coming in. All right. All right. I think it looks like the people coming in are slowing down just a little bit. So perfect. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. So sorry about the technical difficulties with Crowdcast. It never fails, I guess. We tested this a handful of times, had a lot of success with Crowdcast, and Carl and I were actually in the green room beforehand waiting, chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden we both got booted out and couldn't get back in. So we're working with Crowdcast support on that for future Todoist office hours. But in the meantime, we'll utilize Zoom here and do our best, and we'll record this. It's already recording. We'll put this on our YouTube channel for later for all the people that signed up and we're unable to make it to this via Zoom right now. So yeah, again, thank you all for coming. Special thanks to Carl, who's joining us all the way from South Korea, and I'm here in Spain. So we're embracing the remote work culture and going to talk a little bit about Todoist today. And so I'm really excited to have Carl here. He's someone that the whole Todoist team looks to for productivity advice, and he may even know the product better than a lot of us. So it'll be really exciting to see how he can tackle Todoist for beginners and give you guys some tips on how to get started right away. So I'm going to turn it over to Carl, and we'll go from there.
Hi guys, thank you very, very much for joining us. A little late starting, I know, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the setup of a brand new Todoist. So if you're already a Todoist user, this can actually help you if you ever want to do what we suppose you would call is a Todoist bankruptcy, because you've just become overwhelming. This is going to be a good place to actually start again. So I'm going to take you over to my Todoist and my demo account, because I cleared it out this morning. So hopefully you can all see that now. I can see it. Can you all see it? We got a little nod there to make sure. Yeah, right. Okay. So normally if you're brand new to Todoist, you're going to come to this screen. It's going to have this project here called Welcome. Unfortunately, I had to create this because I joined Todoist many years ago, and I've lost whatever tasks were in there. But this is what you will see when you join Todoist. Now, what I really want to do is to go through some of the best practices that you can use when you're getting started with Todoist, or when you download it for the first time. And one of the first things you're going to need to do is obviously to get tasks into Todoist. Now, the simple thing is I always advise people, and there's kind of a funny story here. My wife and I are doing a workshop tomorrow here in Korea on Todoist, and she's not actually a Todoist user, but she is now. And I've been coaching her this afternoon. So it's been really interesting finding out where somebody would actually start with Todoist, coming at it from a completely non-time management productivity background. And the first thing she was asking is, how do you add a task in there? Well, the simple thing with Todoist is start at the inbox. Let's just add a task. Now, there's a tip that I'm going to give you here. And even for you pro users, if you're here, this is a tip that I really recommend that you get into the use of doing, is use an action verb. Because if you just put something like bank or cat food or something like that, in a few days' time, you're going to be scratching your head going, what did I mean by that? What you really need to do is to put yourself into a very, very clear way of doing it. And that's using an action verb. Now, there is a caveat here, because some languages, verbs don't work in the same way as they do in English. Korean is actually one language where the verb comes on the end of the sentence rather than the beginning. I believe German is similar. Somebody pointed out that German is actually quite similar. But in English, what I mean by an action verb is like call mum, for example. And I'm using the English spelling here, mum, not mom. Once you've actually added the task in, you just hit return. Now, on the mobile version, you would just hit enter or add. Actually, it's add on the mobile version. So we got call is the action verb. And I've saved myself some time because I cheated, and I've created a list here. And what I'm going to do, and this is another tip for all you guys out there, is this is kind of another pro tip. If you actually create a set of tasks that you're just brainstorming into a notes app, and this is just Apple Notes, you can do this in Evernote or OneNote or Drafts or any kind of note-taking application. Just create a simple list like this, and you can just brain dump. Then you can highlight them all, copy them, and then if you paste into an open task like this, Todoist is going to ask you, do you want to add 6 tasks? And you click add 6 tasks, and now I've just saved myself a ton of time. What you're going to see here is I now have action verbs here. So I've got call, feed, water, clean, read, buy. So I've got a number of tasks here. They're all clear what I need to do. Call my mum, feed the goldfish, wash the plants, water the plants. I've got these tasks. They're very, very clear. And if I come back to this in a week's time, I still can immediately see what I need to do. Now, once you've got a load of tasks into Todoist, the next thing is where you're going to put them, because you don't want to keep them in your inbox. That's just going to create a huge list that eventually is going to become overwhelming. So what you want to be doing here is you want to be creating a project. So we come down to this section here, which is projects. Now, to create a new project, all you need to do is add plus. And now this is where it's going to get personal, because if you want to do the traditional way of starting, then I would suggest that you just create a personal project and a work project. Just keep it really simple in the early days. You can expand this later when you actually have bigger projects and you really understand using Todoist. But if you're really starting out, I would just say create a personal project and a work project. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, and one of the things that I love about time management is you're managing time. So I like to create projects by time. So I create projects by this week, and all I do is type in the project name this week. I can choose a color, and there's a lot of colors these days that I can choose. So this week is going to be important because it needs to be done like now. So I'm going to add that as a this week. And what you'll see now is I've got this here. Now, if you make a mistake and you want to change a project, quite simply, just come to here. I'm going to move the welcome one, and the 3 dots at the side, ellipses, I believe they're called, but I just call them the 3 dots. Tap on that, and you have a load of options that you can do with the project. So I'm just going to archive this project because it means it doesn't disappear forever. I can always get it back later. And now I want to add another project because I want to create one for next week. So let's create a next week project. And this is basically how I do it. I actually go by time. I'm going to call this one orange. I'm going to add that one. And let's just create one for next month. And this is just a sample for you, just to get yourself started. I'm going to call, we'll just go with olive green. So you can change the colors. So we now have 3 projects. If I go back to my inbox, now I can start organizing these tasks. So I've got here, call my mum. I want to do that this week. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing this. The easiest way, when you want to do it quickly, is just grab the 6 dots at the side, and that's the grab handles, 6 dots. I don't know what they're actually officially called. And just move it over and put it into this week. And bang, it's gone. If you open up there, you've got the number, and I can now see call mum is in this week. Let's go back to my inbox. There is another way that you can add tasks to projects. If you go in here, you can tap on the task and it'll open up a task window. Now, the task window gives you a lot of options. So I could say, well, I need to feed the fish on, what day is it today? It's Thursday today. So I need to feed the fish on Saturday. So I can just tap in there and I can go from here. I've got today, tomorrow, next week, and it actually tells you what next week is, which is Monday. And you can go into the settings and change that. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. But here we go. We got the Saturday. So we tap the Saturday. I can now add the project from here. So select a project. So I'm going to put that, obviously, Saturday's this week, tap this week, and it's in. What you'll notice now is feed the goldfish is not in that project, in my inbox, and now it is in this week. So it's really super easy to do. I need to call mum today. So again, I'll go schedule, and I'm going to call her today. So now I have my dated tasks. If I go into here and I say water the plants, I don't need to do that until next week. So I'll drop in that next week. Clean the house. Well, I'm feeling very lazy. I mean, who likes cleaning the house? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that next month. Read a book. Okay, we're going to read a book. And now here's an interesting one. Self-development is very important. Reading a book, I think, is really important. I try to read every day. So here's a really quick tip on creating the task with what we call a recurring date. So read a book every day. Now, there's a couple of ways, again, of doing this. You can type in the full EVERY, every, and then day. And then I can hit save. But there's a quicker way of doing this. I find that all you have to do is type EV and then day, and it'll do the same thing every day. I can hit that save. Now, just a quick tip here. If you actually did want to just the task to say, read a book every day, and you don't want that to be the date, just tap it. And now that date is no longer dated. That's the full text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to just go EV day, day, and it's done. Save. And you'll see now that this has got the recurring symbol, and it's now telling me, if I just put my mouse over that, it actually tells me every day. So that's cool. I've got that set up. Or it's still in my inbox. So all I need to do is go in here, and I'm going to put that in this week, because obviously every day means it's going to be this week. We got call parents, which is similar to others. So to check a task off, all I have to do is go in here, click tap, and it's done. And the next one, which I actually think is the most important one, which is to buy a premium Todoist subscription. Now, I actually added this because it's a kind of little reminder for me to tell you that if you do what I've just shown you now is perfectly available for the free version. You can create your tasks, you can add dates, you can add recurring dates. So that's the free version. But when you buy the premium version, there's obviously a lot more that you can do. One of which, as I discovered today, I didn't realize this, is you can add comments. So you can add little notes to your tasks. So, that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do, you can add from files from your computer, from Dropbox, or from Google Drive. All you need to do is connect. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can also use labels. I have a few labels here. I like to use labels for people. So I've got a few labels for people here. And there are a number of other things that you can do as well. You can actually share and collaborate with other people. Now, there is one other thing that is part of the free version, though, is if you think buy a premium Todoist subscription, that's number one important task. Well, you can flag. This is a free version. You can use your flags in the free version, and you can go priority one, of course, is top priority, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4. You get to choose how to use these. Now, just to give you a tip, I use these this way. My priority 1 tasks are my objectives for the day. My priority 2 tasks are for tasks that I want to complete in the morning. And my priority 3 tasks are tasks that I want to complete in the afternoon. And priority 4 are just things that I can do in the evening just to finish off the day. So that's how I use it. You could use the Eisenhower matrix, without seeing it. It's important and urgent, important, not urgent. You can be very creative with the way that you use your flags. This one, I'm going to make it a red flag, and you'll see that the check circle has changed to red. Now, just another quick tip on here. If I now schedule that for today, I'm going to schedule that for today. I'm going to move that into my this week project. What you'll see when I go to this week, my today task, it comes up at the top. It will always order your tasks by the order of the priorities, except in one situation. Let me just show you. If I come into here and say, call mum at 4 p.m. today. I need to spell today correctly. So call mum at 4 p.m. today. And now what will happen is this will go to the top. Timed tasks will go to the top of your today list. Then flags will come to the top. And then I'm never sure about how else it works. I think it goes by project or it goes by the date that the task was added. But if you really want to order your tasks, remember, if you add a time to the date, that's going to go to the top. Then it's going to go by flag, red first, then orange, then blue, and then white. And that's the order that they go in. So that's how you add new tasks into Todoist, and it's how you create the projects. Now, things like labels and filters, I'm not going to cover those because they are the premium version. This is really for a beginner's guide. But what I really want to show, and I have to move this because I can see all the videos down the side. I just quickly want to cover the settings in here because, first of all, you can change the theme. Now, I love the Todoist red, but if you prefer, you can choose all sorts of different ways of doing it. So the starred ones are premium colors. So you need to have a premium account to use the starred ones here, but you can still use the Todoist red. You can use noir. You can use dark mode, which is actually pretty cool. Todoist has got that spot on with their colors. You can have a neutral, which is basically no color, and then tangerine. And so dark mode, I show you in dark mode because it is actually a really super cool way of looking at it. Dark mode is really quite there are some apps out there that haven't quite got their dark mode right, but I do believe Todoist have done a fantastic job. The colors pop out. It's superb that what they've done with the dark mode. And so that's just one thing that you can do. You can change that with the dark mode. I'm going to go back to my inbox. Sorry, go to today. And then another thing I mentioned before, which is setting next week. What does next week mean? Now you can set this how you want to set it. So for example, if I go into general, by the way, you can create your own start page. Now, again, labels and filters are for premium users, but you can actually create start page from to do, upcoming, inbox, whatever your projects are. So you can actually create your own start page. I'm just going to create it in today. And then if you don't like this smart date recognition, where it recognizes the dates like EV every day, you can turn this off here. Yes or no. I actually like it. I've got so used to using it. And start of week and next week. So next week is this is what I mean when you see the date. So we go back into the, if I just go back into my quickly go back into today. So I'll show you. So if we go into date, you see next week. So at the moment it's set for Monday. What you can do is you can change that, and you can change that to whatever day you want. So it's in general, and you go down to next week. So you can change that to Sunday, for example, or maybe you want to do it on a Saturday. Whatever you want, you can change that day to whatever day you want it. And of course, you can start the day whichever way you want it. And just a quick one here, the Daily Digest is really cool. If you're working in an office, this is a really good tip. If you work in one of those companies where they are so tight on security, so you can't access Todoist when you're working in an office, what you can do is you can turn on Daily Digest and have it emailed to you. And then when you get to the office, you just print it out. The beauty of printing it out is you get to check off your tasks. You can add new tasks to that sheet of paper. You can add notes. And then later, you can have like a 20-minute session where you plan the next day and you can just see all your notes from the day. And in the past, I'm totally digital now, but in the past, I used to do that. And that 20 minutes was such a wonderful time of the day where it was like, I've accomplished all this today. I just need to sort this out for tomorrow. And it all starts again. You get the email the next morning. I think it used to arrive at 5 a.m. in the morning or something like that. It's a fantastic thing if you're working in one of those companies that do not allow you to use apps or the internet or whatever on their system. There's a lot of stuff in settings, but those are the ones that I would always try say to beginners to go and have a look, because you can change quite a few things in there and how Todoist actually works. But that's really what I wanted to cover with you today. I've just gone past midnight, by the way, which is why suddenly I've got a load of overdue tasks. Perfect timing. So what happens when you come, because let's be honest, we're not all on the ball every single day. We don't always complete our tasks every single day. What can you do? Todoist has got a great one. If you go into the Today view, you'll see right up here at the top, reschedule. And I'm going to be confession time now. I probably have to do this 5 out of 7 days a week. I'm going to be rescheduling something. I think we all do. We try not to, but we all do. So all you need to do is hit that reschedule button. And now, as I've now gone past midnight, so I can now hit today, and that's going to be now Friday. It's Friday morning for me now. So now this all comes in today. So there's another way you can do this, which is a little bit more difficult. You can use the grab handles here. If you hit shift click and then shift click at the bottom, you'll see that the menu comes up at the top here. And now you can change all these tasks. So I can reschedule it. I can change it again that way. But if you do find that you've got overdue tasks, the quickest way is just hit that reschedule button, move it over to today. That's what I basically do every single day. And really, that's it. That's what I wanted to cover, so that you get just a basic overview of how to get started with Todoist. And from there on in, go explore. That's the best way to learn. So anyway, I will hand it back to Chase, and I think you might have some questions.
That was great, Carl. Yeah, thank you so much. I think you touched on a lot of the things that when we get new users that have just signed up for an account, we get a lot of these questions coming in, and I think you touched on quite a few of the main ones that people generally have some question marks about when they first get started. So really great tips. That was fantastic. We got some questions ahead of time, and we actually got some questions during your presentation. So
Okay.
I'll shoot those over to you now, and let's see where it goes.
I can open up the chat. Actually, I can see. Yep, I've got. We got a question about the Todoist bankruptcy. I saw there.
Yeah.
um,
Let me ask you something, Carl. I'm interested to get your opinion on. Do you have a philosophy sort of on adding everything into Todoist versus just adding the very, I guess, like the actual tasks? You know, I know some people will put literally every little thing in their day into Todoist, and others try to keep it really for like their core work, or the more in-depth tasks, I guess, might be the way to put it. What is your
okay, I do my project planning in my Notes app, because Notes apps are just so much better for screenshots. Just it's everything in one screen. But what I'm doing at the same time is I'm adding the tasks at the bottom. And that little trick that I showed you about, you know, if you brainstorm into a Notes app and then you can copy and paste into Todoist, that's essentially what I do. So I'll brainstorm a project in a Notes app, and then I'll pick out the key tasks, the tasks that are going to drive the project forward, and move them into Todoist and decide when I'm going to do them. But there's another use that I use it for, because although hopefully now that I've coached my wife this afternoon on Todoist, maybe she doesn't need this anymore, but she will say, can you remind me on Tuesday to buy the dog some more medicine? First thing I do, straight into Todoist, because I know I will forget. So I'm throwing all sorts of, I'll throw the reminders in. Yeah, sure. I've got the core project tasks going in there, you know, if you like the boring work stuff. Of course, that gets put in there because I need to be able to plan my day, and Todoist is a key part of planning my day. But I also include those little reminders that, you know, also like if I'm waiting for something, I set up I incorporated my business back in end of February, and then I had to go to Ireland because my parents and family live in Ireland to set up the bank account. I set up the bank account right at the beginning of March, flew back to Korea, and then COVID-19 hit Europe big style. And so what should have taken a week ended up taking 6 weeks. So I ended up, all the tasks that I was waiting for, all the things I was waiting for, like the bank account number, the IBAN number, the bank cards and credit card numbers, I had to wait for them to come through. So I just created a simple checklist task, which was review banking. review business banking, and then I created subtasks underneath. I didn't show subtasks today, but that's we know in the future everyone I can show that. But so I'm showing pretty much everything into Todoist, particularly things that I do need to be reminded of it, because I trust Todoist. It's never let me down. So there's a few apps I use, a few apps that we've used today that do let you down. So.
Yeah, technology doesn't always work in our favor, but that's great. Yeah, I try to use Todoist as sort of a second brain, sort of. And my wife is in a similar position to you. I mean, we use it together, but she's getting acclimated to it and using some of the features that are not such power user features, I guess. And so yeah, that's coming along. How about projects? You mentioned this before, keeping it simple with projects. We notice a lot of people have varying kind of philosophies on, do I have a lot of projects with a handful of tasks in each, or do I have a few general projects? You sort of touched on this, but could you go a little deeper on what your thoughts are on that?
Well, this is an interesting one, because I coach quite a lot of people in productivity. And when I'm coaching people with ADHD, for example, they need to break down the tasks into really fine, detailed tasks. So in that particular situation, I would advise them to set it up by project, because they need to have those tasks micromanaged. But then other people don't. I don't need to micromanage my tasks. I mean, I use triggers. For example, really simple one. I know when to take the garbage out because the garbage can is full. Yeah, that's my trigger. I don't need a reminder to take the garbage out, because if it's not full, it doesn't need taking out. So that's my trigger. It doesn't need to go in the to-do list. But some other people, so I don't need a lot of tasks in a project. I just need, usually a project is begin working on this file. And then when I finish that for the day, so I've started it, so task is complete, I change begin to continue working on, and then redate it. So, and then, because continue, if I say finish a file, but I know I'm going to need 3 days to it, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to procrastinate. So continue to me is just a much easier word, because if I only do 500 words, or if I'm in the zone and do 5,000 words, either way, the task is complete. So it depends on the way you think and the way you want to manage it. I have some people who just really do not like doing it by time like I do. As I say, they prefer by project, and there's no wrong way of doing it. It's what you need to do is to find the way that you like to do it. I don't need to micromanage tasks, but I do know many people who do feel more comfortable micromanaging tasks, which is fine as long as it's working and not overwhelming you. If it's overwhelming you, you need to kind of step back and think, okay, maybe I'm micromanaging this too much, and just kind of make the task a little bit more a bigger task, rather than open file. Start typing. Some people do need that, and that's fine. I mean, I wouldn't laugh at that. I don't need that one. I just need continue working. So there's like two extremes there.
Right.
So you need to find the balance that works for you.
Yeah, I guess there's no one size fits all. I mean,
there isn't.
Tailor it to your personal needs, and the tool is built to be customizable in that way, so that people can use it from different vantage points. So that's great.
Absolutely.
I have plenty of questions I want to ask, but our guests here are going to take priority over me. So I'm gonna let's see what we've got here in the chat directly. So shouldn't the Todoist UI by default suggest the verb thing? But that's a fair question. I'm not sure.
Well, with multiple languages, that's going to be that'll be a big job.
To answer that question directly, Sahil. If you're not aware, we translate the app into 18 different languages. So that would be pretty challenging and maybe hard to manipulate. As we just mentioned, actually, it's kind of a nice segue. We want the tool to be useful for people that are coming from different perspectives. So might be hard to manipulate it in that way, but thank you for the idea. And then speaking of Todoist bankruptcy, I love this. Carl, I don't know if you see that question directly. I can read it.
I do see the question. Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay.
basically,
that's actually a really good question. This is where you use the archive. I didn't go into too much detail about the archive, but actually, let me just share my screen again, because I did archive something. Actually, this is this one is this way. Oh, where's my Todoist? Did I close out Todoist? Oh, it's there. Right. So if I go into archive now, this is my demo account. So I cleaned it up. I've got a lot of projects in here. So it's going to take, he's now thinking. So as you can see, I actually haven't lost any of these projects. So I can move in, let's say, this is my demo account. So I can actually restore this one by just going into it and unarchive. That's it. So even if you do, so now this one's up here. This is my, this one's my new one. This is the one I've just, was it? Oh, it's there. It is next week. Sorry. This is the one that I actually had in archive. So you can unarchive any project. So if you want to do, a hard bankruptcy, you have to delete everything. That takes a lot of courage, I know. But if you actually want to do what I would call a soft bankruptcy, then all you need to do is just hit the archive. So again, sorry, I should just, I didn't show you how to do that. Again, if I go into, Todoist is there, so let's just share that. So again, if you just go into here, I can go into the 3 dots, the ellipses, and down here, you've got the choice. So for those of you who are really brave, hit the bottom one, delete project. It deletes everything. For those of you who are not brave enough and just, you're just not sure, then okay, just hit the archive project, bang, and it's disappeared. But it's only disappeared to your archive projects, and it actually stays at the top. So if you do change your mind, I can just go in and say, oh no, really, I shouldn't. And then you just bring it back. It brings it back at the bottom. Actually, while I'm there, by the way, you can actually move these around. So I can actually move this back up to the top, just like that, with the grab handles at the side. I should have mentioned that one. So you do have a choice to do it. You can be brave and go all in and delete the project and restart completely, or you can go in and do a soft bankruptcy and do the archive. So that's a good one.
Yeah, another point, I've had this happen to me before, especially after a vacation or something, and you come back to a lot of tasks maybe that have been assigned to you or whatnot, but you can actually select multiple tasks and then reassign them to a due date, which that due date could be no due date. So that is a possibility by highlighting multiple tasks using Shift and clicking on each task in this long list, and then reassigning the due date to a future date or to another project. So that might be an option as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you'd recommend that or not.
I should say by the way, Hugo answered my question, which I can never remember, but I just see that Hugo has actually answered the question. Ordering today, upcoming views, due date, due time, priority, then task creation date and time, project and task. So yeah, he's answered that question for us.
Yeah, thank you.
I love the next question.
So would you say Todoist is better than Google Keep and Calendar? We're biased.
That's a damn good question. And now, okay, I know this is a Todoist video, but I actually I can tell you a story here. I recently launched a new course called the Time Sector System, and I was trying to put together samples from all the major companies like Apple Reminders, Microsoft To Do. And I had a look at Google Tasks, actually, and I just went, just don't go there. I mean, I don't know what Google's done, but if you really, really want a very, 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 very basic, absolutely no features, just a list, then that's fine. I mean, that's what Google Tasks will do. Google Keep, on the other hand, gets messy. Now, I've looked at Google Keep a few times, and I do like that you can create task lists in there. You can create a checklist. You can create notes. You can do a lot of things in there. But what I noticed is because it managed very much like Post-it notes on a board, it rapidly becomes very busy. And then it becomes increasingly difficult to actually find what you're looking for. On the Google Calendar, there is some workarounds with that. I have seen that you can actually create tasks and then move them onto your calendar. But it's not as seamless as having something like Todoist or other to-do list managers. I mean, they are seamless because they're built to be to-do list managers. When you're trying to hack apps to work in a way that you want, things are just going to break. Mm-hmm. And you spend way too much time trying to fix it. It's just far better saying, look, I need a to-do list manager, Todoist. I need a calendar. Well, Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook Calendar. They're good calendars. I mean, choose one and stick with it.
Carl, do you integrate, or what calendar do you use personally?
I have to turn the power. I didn't turn the power on my. Me? You can hear me now.
Yeah, perfect. Oh,
Temporary technology problem there. Right. So yeah, I use Apple Calendar because it's simple. I know it's not as feature rich as Google Calendar, but then I don't have a team of people, so I don't need to see other people's schedules. And I just like the simplicity of Apple's calendars. I have to confess, I do also have Fantastical, which
yeah.
I love. And I love its integration with Todoist. I think it's fantastic. But I think I must be old school where I prefer my to-dos to be in Todoist and my events to be on my calendar. I don't really like to mix them, but you can. Obviously, Todoist integrates with Google Calendar, Apple Calendar. It's two-way integration with Google
Yeah.
Calendar, and it's one way with Outlook and Apple Calendar. But either way, I prefer not to do that. But again, you find the system that works for you. So for me, it doesn't work, but I know for other people, I'm sure it does.
This could be a whole nother episode of this, actually, is talking about the use of calendars with Todoist, because, and perhaps we can do that another time, because I think it can be really powerful, but it can also be really messy if not done in the right way. So yeah, that would be a great subject to cover at some point. We're going to move through some of these next ones a little bit quicker, just because due to time's sake, and because Carl's got to sleep at some point. And so
what's that? what was that? Sleep?
It's called sleep. Opinions on using Todoist for shopping grocery lists. I can say from my personal experience, this is just a super simple, very nice way to make marriage better. My wife and I created a grocery list. This is how I got her into Todoist, was just saying, hey, let's use this for shopping lists only. And it's a game changer for just communication and just keeping things simple. I don't know if you have any additional tips on that, Carl.
I mean, I tend to use Todoist specifically for my work. So my wife and I actually use, because we both have iPhones and we both have an Apple Watch. So actually just saying to, I'm going to be careful how you say, just saying to Siri, add to my shopping list, which we have in reminders. It's just built in. It's the only time I ever use reminders, actually, which is actually for the shopping list, because of the Siri indication. It's just built in. It just works. So
yeah, it doesn't take any.
Yeah, I have used Todoist is great for shopping lists, and I know a lot of people who use it for that. So that's cool.
Perfect. And how do you defer tasks that you don't need to worry about until a certain date without start dates of any kind?
I actually have a folder called, I call it, I've forgotten what I've called it. Long-term and on hold. And so if I don't need to worry about something until a certain date, now I can, if it's a particular date, I will just add the task into my long-term and on hold, but I will then just add a date and it will come up in my today view and it will just say something like restart this project or review this project or consider, doing this. And if it comes up, and I mean, it comes up unflagged because it's not urgent. It's just a random day saying 3 months that I want to review it. So it's in my long-term and on hold folder. And again, though, I've had this before. A lot of people ask about start dates. Now, I used to be in the OmniFocus world. I know about start dates. They are a nightmare. When you got start dates and due dates, what's the start date? What's the due date? If you don't want to see something, don't date it. Don't flag it, you won't see it. But if you put it in a folder, that I get on my rant now because it's just something that I just don't get. Why are you overcomplicating things? But really, all you need is have a long-term folder. Even if it's a project like a project you're going to be working on for a year, you just need to add a simple task that says review this project or whatever, and just add a date. That can be your start date, but it then doesn't mean that you've got loads of tasks. As long as you're not adding a date, a flag, or and it's just sitting in a project folder, you're not going to see it. When you add a date, you will only see it on the day that you add. So you've got a start date, but you've got to be really careful, because I've seen so many people who, Todoist is very, very functional, and there's a lot of features for power users, but just because it's got a feature doesn't mean you have to use it.
That's
You know, I don't use labels, for example. Personally, I don't use labels. I used to do, but we live, you know, my phone can do pretty much everything my laptop can do. My, you know, if I have my iPad, so I used to have labels like at computer, at phone, sure. I don't need that anymore. So in the end, last year, I ended up stopping using labels, but I use filters a lot because filters create workflows, which we're going to talk about in a future office hours episode. But the filters are real core for me because that's giving me a workflow. So be careful with start dates and due dates. You'll end up getting yourself so confused, and something will come up and you think, is it a start date? Is it oh no, don't go down that road. Keep it simple, just a simple task, review this project, and you can add a date in 3 months time. And Todoist can just say in 3 months. So you don't even have to go looking for the date. You just say, review this project in 3 months. It'll put the date in for you. You've got a start date. So that's the way I would do it. I would always rant about that. So it's, yeah, I've been in the start date and due dates, and I have seriously had so many problems with that. It's just not worth it. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I really try to urge people to just keep it simple. You said it perfectly. Just because there's a feature there doesn't mean we have to use it all the time. I also will personally, like, I have some things like this where I don't want to necessarily have a due date. I have a project where I'll dump tasks that I want to come back to at some point, and I'll just have a reoccurring task, say every Wednesday, to check that project and just see if there's something there that I can knock out. Some people do that with labels. You mentioned your take on labels, but some people will have a label set up for, you know, a particular set of tasks that they want to come back to at some point, but they don't want to have a due date on it. So there's multiple ways to handle that use case. Yeah. I will try to go quickly through the rest of these. So just really, how do you personally use subtasks? What would be like a core use for subtasks, as opposed to, just to add a little something to the question, as opposed to just creating the tasks in a list? Why use subtasks?
Well, for me, it's like, for example, if I'm going on a trip, it's a dream at the moment, but if I was going on a trip, like going to Europe again, yeah, I would create a task, and the task would simply be review trip to Europe. And I would actually set, this is what I do actually, I set a day, every Friday it will come up. Inside there's my subtask, and it's like a checklist. So have I got this? Have I got that? As the take, you know, then, because I usually fly probably on a Saturday or Sunday when I'm flying over to Europe. So I can then, I've got my checklist there, and I can just move it forward every week. So are the flights booked? You know, I don't need to book hotel because I'm staying with my parents. But, you know, there's those little things that I do. So that's how I use it, mainly for checklists on a major task. I don't have many. I probably have maybe one or two at any one time, but they're little checklists that I do use.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. For me, they become very helpful when just from a visual standpoint, when you want to collapse, like if I have a project especially with coworkers, if I have 100 tasks in this project, I want to collapse some of those to be able to see the main sections that can be used. So that's where subtasks for me can become useful, just from a pure visual standpoint. And who is Todoist Premium best for? I guess maybe another way to say this is, when would you say you really need to probably move on from free and go to premium? Is it feature based?
I think, well, okay, if you're a beginner, I wouldn't recommend starting immediately, because you don't know. I mean, Todoist might not be for you. I mean, it isn't for everybody. Hopefully it is, but I mean, let's get real here. It isn't going to fit for everybody. Some people are more in the Trello and Asana where they like boards, although boards, I believe, is coming to Todoist soon. So maybe we're going to cross that one anyway. But when it comes to premium users, you will know after about a month whether it's going to be useful. Now, for me, I couldn't live without it. I add comments all the time. I do, when I'm like, I think many of the people on this call have probably heard of Francesco D'Alessio. When we do a collaboration, we're using it through Todoist and Twist, but we're using it through Todoist. And you know, if I'm collaborating with anybody that I'm working with that I know uses Todoist, I need that collaboration tool. So those are kind of premium things that you're using. I also have in the past, as I say, I know people who find labels really useful. A salesperson, for example, often has a lot of follow-ups to do and a lot of calls to do. And if you add a label for calls, if you add a label for follow-ups, it's really quick to get into all the calls that you need to do today, or all the calls, you can just create a filter. So that's another one as well, is the filters are just so powerful. And for me, that's my workflow every single day. And as I say, I don't want to go into that too much today because I know we're going to cover that in the next one. But when you see how I build the workflow and when you see the possibilities, you will understand where premium really comes into it.
Great answer. Yeah, I agree. And it's true. I mean, I would also recommend people don't dive straight into premium. Give it a try on the free version, get the basic functionality, and then upgrade if you find that you're hitting some blockers. I think that's a smart way to go.
I do apologize, Eric. I should apologize. Yeah, I realized my mistake. Zoom gives you so many different view options. I pressed the wrong one. So apologies. You saw my notes. Sorry.
I was understanding what you were saying through the verbal part. So I was thinking we've got you. Sahil, I'm glad I got your name right. I hope that's not sarcasm. I hope I actually got it right. So that's great. And happy to hear that we answered Jonas's question as well. So any recommendations for waiting fors? Things?
Yeah, that's another one for premium. I would say use it as a label.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're creating projects for like calls, you're creating projects for waiting for, you just create a ton of projects that you're just going to feel overwhelmed. Waiting for is labels every time.
Yeah, perfect. Great. And if anybody's out there, if you're really just getting started and you're saying, what are labels? This is just another way to classify a task. So it's a very simple way just to add something to a task without a due date. And then you can filter you can actually look just at labels. So something like a task that takes 5 minutes, for instance, you can have a list of all your tasks that will only take 5 minutes. So when you have a free 5 minutes, you can just go and knock out one of those. Tips for using Todoist to study. Carl, do you work with any students or?
I do, and this one is great. I mean, the projects, for example, that's why I said about the projects. If you're starting out, you start with personal and business, or you can do time. If you're a student, you can create projects for your different subjects. And then and then you can create tasks within there. So it could be like review lecture notes, type up lecture notes. Mind you, I'm old school. I went to university a long time ago. I used to handwrite the notes in the class because we didn't have iPads or phones. But then actually, when I got home, I did type them up. So I did used to go digital even 20 years ago. But that's what I would do. I mean, obviously you can create a personal project because as a student, you've got a personal life. I mean, it's part of learning. Coming from England, it's part of going to university is learning to drink, learning to date, and learning to dance whilst drunk and dating. We did it. Oh, that's university life. So you got a personal life to manage as well. But obviously the subjects as well, you have those inside as your projects, and then you can create, like, if you've got an assignment to do, you can create the tasks inside that. So yeah, Todoist is great for students. It really can help you to focus on the subjects that you really need, and the tasks that you have to do then as a student will bubble up into your today view. So you're not having to necessarily go looking for what to do. It will come up in your day view.
On that note, do you live more in your today view or in the inbox view? Or
I live in my filters. So I have a focus today filter. More on that in the next episode. Which actually will show people exactly how I can stay focused on what's important. My filter basically filters out. So essentially the way that it works is I have my focus today filter around about 4 o'clock each day. I've completed most of those, and then I switch over to today, because then it's just the less important tasks, and it doesn't matter when I get those complete. So
I see. Okay.
So I do use today, but usually after 4 p.m.
Perfect. And Donald had asked, can you use searchable dates in comments? And if I understand that question correctly, that would not be that would not be possible in the comments unless you see that in a different way. The date parsing that you see, Donald, and that you guys can all see when Carl typed every Wednesday or something like that, that is limited to the task itself, not within the comments. And so how do you manage daily routines? I want to have a start up and shut down routine for my days, but I don't want to clutter up the today view with 20 tasks for those routines. From there, if you have one task and have the subtasks are checked the next day. I really want to include these in Todoist.
Right. Okay. Here's a really good question, because I have a morning and a closing down routine. When you start, you need Todoist. But what you're wanting to do is you're using Todoist to actually build a habit. So you're using Todoist temporary for your morning and evening routines. So if you haven't read this book yet, I'm going to recommend a book. I tell everyone to go out and buy this book. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think everyone should read this book. Now, one of the things that you'll learn in that book, when you read it, I'm going to be positive here. When you read that book, you're going to read that book. One of the things that you will learn in that is triggers. Now, I mentioned it before about garbage can. If my garbage can is full, I need to take it out. That's my trigger. But I have a trigger for my morning routine. It's really quite simple. I need coffee. So the first thing I do, and I think I've been doing it for 30, maybe 40, I don't know, 40 years probably. No, it can't be 40. It must be 30. 30 years, I make coffee first thing in the morning. I jump out of, no, I don't jump out of bed. I climb out of bed. I go to the kitchen. I turn on the kettle. That's my trigger. Now, I go to the gym a bit, and my personal trainer said my shoulders need flexibility. So he gave me some shoulder exercises to do. So it takes 4 minutes to make my coffee. So I do 4-minute shoulder exercises. But the trigger is, as soon as I put that kettle on, I've been doing this now for probably about 6 months, because I started in January. I don't need to do it anymore, simply because I needed to do this for the first 2 months. I was forgetting. And the way that I did it was morning routine, subtasks underneath. So I can close the triangle. Now people are going to say, yeah, but when you check them off, then it's going to mess up your karma points because you have to uncheck them for the next day. Well, okay. I don't mind. I mean, my goal is not to improve my karma points. My goal is to build that routine into a habit. So what's the outcome you're looking for here? If you want great karma points, then you create a task and then every day duplicate it, and you can do it that way. But to me, the purpose was to build the habit. So what you do is your morning routines and then list out underneath as subtasks, so you can close it so it's not cluttering up your today view. Check it off. Don't check off the main task because it disappears. But you can uncheck the task in your subtasks, and that's the way I would do it.
Beautiful.
Actually, so essentially, you're just using it as using Todoist for a month or two to build the habit, and then hopefully the habit's built.
Yeah, what is 21 days to create a habit, right? So if you can do that for a couple weeks, then you get into the habit of it, and you don't need to do some of these things anymore. Use Todoist to help you get there.
Yeah. I see there's a lot of people love that book. Yeah, it's such a fantastic book. Yeah,
especially in the productivity world, this is a big time seller. Yeah. Someone asked me if I live in filters, and I don't. I'm very excited to see the next office hours where we will discuss filters and how to create workflows with filters. So I would be the wrong person to ask about this. And fortunately, we've got here the right person to ask about it for the next time. And Sahil, would you recommend Todoist to neurotics? I'll swing that over to Carl. I'm not.
But it depends what you're meaning by neurotics. I mean, I mentioned about people with ADHD, and yes, Todoist really does work because you can fine tune and really micro manage the tasks. I remember if you've got like ADHD, your attention is not going to stay there. So you need constant reminders about what to do next. I'm not sure what you mean exactly by neurotics, but I'm assuming it's very similar to ADHD. In which case, then yeah, again, because if you're going off on different tangents all the time. Now, this is one of those things. a little bit of psychology, really basic stuff is like you've got the entrepreneurial mind and you've got the employee mind. The entrepreneurial mind never, ever stops thinking. I have it, I'm afraid. I can't work for a company. I learned that one the hard way. I need to be starting companies. And seriously, my brain never, ever stops. And I've met so many entrepreneurs who are the same way, constantly coming up with ideas. Well, you need to do it because you've got to be collecting those ideas, because the fear for people like me and other entrepreneurs is one of those ideas will be the billion-dollar idea, and we don't want to miss it. And, you know, you'll see a lot of like non-techie entrepreneurs, they just carry bits of paper with them and it's constantly writing. You know, this is where we probably got the back of the napkin idea from, because these ideas are constantly coming. So if that's the kind of neurotic they're talking about, then yeah, Todoist, you know, it's the perfect tool. You're collecting all those ideas in your inbox and then you can sort them later. So I totally get that side of it too. So yeah.
Yeah, I think if people are coming from the standpoint of their mind doesn't stop spinning, there's always ideas that, or maybe if you're a little bit obsessive compulsive about you know, fear of forgetting something, or maybe you just actually do forget things quite a bit. I think it can be, there's the spectrum of being a neurotic is probably pretty wide, and depending on where you are on that, you can probably use it to help cure some of those pains. Someone asked here, we're going to wrap up with these last two. Unfortunately, I'm not sure. There was a question, are there any plans to have the functionality to have both options? But I think that was during an explanation of something, and I'm not sure what that's referring to. So if you want to clarify
maybe
that.
to do with the the subtasks, because I know a lot of people do ask that question. But yeah, it's, you basically have to recreate the task every day. I think the big issue there, and I know a lot of people have asked me about this, is if it's possible to create the parent task and recur that, and it will keep the subtasks recurring. At the moment, it doesn't. You check off the subtasks and the main task will recur, but the subtasks have gone.
Right.
So what they want is the subtask to recur as well. I think that's what it might be meaning. So
yeah. And there's some, this is a discussion we have internally, and I can tell you we are trying to address it. It's not as simple as it might sound there to solve that problem. It actually can create some drawbacks. So, but this is on our radar. Yes, I can assure you of that. And then can we have the options or like a template on how you'll use Todoist? You have many filters. It's really deep on the way you use it. So basically, I think is asking for a possibility to have some sort of template.
Well, actually, my video that I did on Todoist last weekend.
I just saw that, by the way.
Yeah, that was actually on my workflows, and also that little bonus on my purpose and objectives project that I use, because a lot of people ask me about that one too. So if you stick around to the end of that video, I only have about 3 or 4 filters. I don't have many more than that, and they're really quite simple. Like my focus today is really simple. It's basically today and not P4. P4 is flag 4, the white flag, and not, the symbol for not is the exclamation mark. It's really, really quite simple is that one. And I love that because it means anything that I haven't flagged is not important. So it's not going to show up. But if anyone is really interested, that video goes into quite a bit of details of my filters. It won't spoil the next episode of this because I will create some, not just mine, but I will show some others that I know other people use and live by. So it's going to be more on that as well.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to a great point, Carl. While we wrap this up, where can people find you to follow along your work and to see your courses and such? Where's the best place for them to go? Best
place to find me is at my website, which is www.carlpullein.com. That's it. Everything, you can get access to everything from there: podcast, the YouTube videos, my blog, the online courses and coaching. Everything is there. So that's the best place to find me.
And how do you describe yourself? Are you focused on productivity as a whole? I mean, for people that are just meeting you for the first time here, we've just talked about Todoist, but what does your work encompass?
I mean, my work these days is more and more about helping people to become better organized and more productive. And I do that through my online courses. I do it through one-on-one coaching and tomorrow workshops. So, and actually, COVID has been very kind to me. I'm one of the lucky ones. So, business-wise, hasn't been affected at all by, the COVID. But one of the plus sides is I've increasingly got more workshops now, online workshops. So
Yep.
I'm developing my studio to be able to do workshops from, from basically this little studio. So, so everything I do is really to help people to become better organized and more productive. But I also help people with their goals and helping them to plan out their goals, because that's part of productivity. So.
Wonderful. That's perfect. Okay, great. Well, we will have Carl back in a couple weeks. For all of you still here with us, the idea is to do Todoist office hours every 1 to 2 weeks with one of our Todoist ambassadors, as Carl is. He's one of our few official Todoist ambassadors. And so we've got another one. Carl actually mentioned Francesco's name a few minutes ago. Francesco will be joining us next week, and Carl will be back with us in a few weeks. You can follow along, keep in touch with our social media, and also on the Crowdcast link where you all originally signed up. We'll post each of those upcoming events there. So there's a couple different ways you can stay in touch or stay up to date on these. And of course, these will also all live on our YouTube channel after this. So you'll be able to access them there. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. Carl, I don't know if you have any last words for anybody. Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up.
That's it. I think we covered a lot today. So thank you very much for having me on here.
Yeah, we
I
did.
do apologize for the mix up at the beginning.
Yeah. Thank you all for sticking around with us through the technical difficulties. We will certainly try to get that resolved with Crowdcast and have a better backup plan in place for next time. So. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, see you all guys next time.